Joy Meets World. I'm your host, Joy Yugi, and on this podcast, I am sharing my adventures traveling around the U.S., visiting our national parks with my faithful dog, Quincy. And today I get to tell you about my trip to Voyageurs National Park in Minnesota. So we left off in Williston, North Dakota, where I was visiting Teddy Roosevelt National Park. And I actually drove 6 hours, about 400 miles to Fargo, North Dakota, as kind of a halfway point to my next park. I was really looking forward to Fargo. It seems like such a unique place, and you always hear about it. I've always wondered about it. And honestly, I don't know if it was the weather or the time of year, but there's not much to see or tell about Fargo. The weather was average. It was in the 60s. One day it was really windy. It was very gusty, so it was hard to be outside. The campus of North Dakota State University is there, and my Airbnb apartment was on campus, but it was mid-May, so I think most students had left campus. The semester was over. Maybe the only people left were waiting for commencement or taking finals. There wasn't a lot of activity going on, so not much to report about Fargo. I did take my car in for a scheduled oil change, and they found a nail in my tire. So the air pressure light hadn't come on yet, but probably it would have sooner rather than later if I hadn't had taken my car in. So that was a good thing. I'm glad that they found that before I left for my next destination, which was Orr, Minnesota, ORR, Minnesota, which is the gateway to Voyageurs National Park. So from Fargo to Orr, Minnesota, it was just a 2-hour drive, and it was about 250 miles, so not bad at all. There are lakes everywhere in Minnesota, so it makes complete sense that, they call it the land of 10,000 lakes, because it really is. There's water everywhere. There's lakes everywhere. That's the first thing that strikes you when you go to Minnesota. And it really, as you travel, you really get that sense of why these places are called what they're called and why they have a reputation for what they have a reputation for. You get like a very real sense of their names, and kind of sticks with you. So that was really neat. My Airbnb was a cabin on Ash Lake, a little lake, kind of at the start of Voyageurs National Park. So Voyageurs National Park, sort of like how Olympic National Park is, in that it has set boundaries, but there's a lot of public land mixed in there as well. There are no entrance gates or fees. There are a couple of visitor centers and then trails around the visitor center, but it's really almost like a region more than an actual park with set boundaries. The town of International Falls was about 45 minutes away. That's actually the headquarters for Voyageurs National Park, or the headquarters is located there. And International Falls is right on the border with Canada. And it's also known as the Icebox of America because it is the coldest place in the U.S. consistently. It was not cold when I went. It was about 70 degrees and sunny. It was a beautiful spring day, so I completely lucked out. There's also a giant Smokey the Bear statue in their downtown park, which was really neat. Go check out my reel on Instagram if you want to see that. So Voyageurs National Park, what you should be aware of is that all of its visitor centers are closed until June. So they only stay open from June to, I believe, October. So it's really a very short season if you want to take advantage of the visitor center. But because they don't have fees, you can really go at any time and hike these trails whenever you want. You just have to be aware that because the visitor centers are not open until June and aren't open during the winter, it means in effect that the rangers are not maintaining the trails. And so the trails were completely clear when I went hiking, but they were covered in fallen trees, and they weren't, like, I lost the trail a couple of times because it wasn't super clear. Just if you think about a whole winter's worth of activity going on without it being cleared, if you go in with that expectation, you'll be fine. I definitely had my All Trails app going, so I could pull that up if I felt like I'd lost the trail. A few places had to climb over tree trunks that had fallen, a bunch of tree limbs over the trail. So it was an adventure. The area had received a lot of rain, and it rained a whole day when I was there, and it was actually under a flood watch, the whole area of Voyageurs National Park. So as you can imagine, a lot of the trail that I hiked was flooded. You had to kind of find ways around it, just because you know how trails are. They get rutted, they're depressed into the ground, and so they're a perfect place for lakes to pool up. Going up or down a steep incline, that's a perfect place for water to create a stream. So nothing crazy, but definitely not at this point in time during this season, the easiest trail to hike. The trail that I did hike is first the Kabetagama Lake Overlook Trail, which is not much of a trail. It's a 1/10 of a mile, but it goes out to a point where you can look at the lake. And then that starts from there. You can take the Blind Ash Bay Trail, which is a 3-mile lollipop loop is what it's called. So if you think about how a lollipop looks, you go all the way up, to the lollipop, go around it, do a circle, and then kind of come back down the lollipop handle. So that was the shape of the trail. And at the very top of that loop was this spectacular view of Kabetagama Lake. It was beautiful. And what a beautiful day. It was 75 degrees and sunny with a breeze, and the pine trees were just so fragrant. It was probably one of the best hikes I've done on this trip. It was just beautiful. The views were beautiful. The hike, it really wasn't hard. It was a moderate hike. So you didn't, feel the 3 miles. And the view was just stunning at the end. So I would definitely recommend it if you go. Like I said, the other day it rained that I was there, so I really wasn't able to do much hiking. And the other visitor centers were farther away. So I went to the Ash River Visitor Center because I was staying on Ash Lake. So the Ash River feeds Ash Lake. So it was about 30 minutes away. Whereas the other ones would have been much farther, 45 minutes to an hour and a half to just get there, and then not even to do the hike. There's not much in the area either as far as restaurants or grocery stores. There's a couple gas stations, which is good, but if you go there, I had to drive up to International Falls to go to a coffee shop to get my groceries. So there's not a lot near Orem, Minnesota, but there were a ton of people out when I was there. I think it was the first real spring weather they had seen. There were lots and lots of boats and fishermen out and about on the roads, on the ramp by my Airbnb, at Ash Lake, just a ton of fishermen. And every time you turned on the radio, no matter what radio station you were at, they were talking about fishing and different lakes and how the weather related to that. So just a little taste of that, culture. Voyageurs National Park became a national park in 1975. Voyageurs is a French word meaning travelers. But back when the fur trade was big, the fur traders were called voyageurs. They were the French fur traders that were known as voyageurs, and They as soon as the weather, so essentially this time of year, as soon as the weather turned warm, they would take all of their goods that they had traded with the Native Americans from Grand Portage all the way down to Lake Athabasca. So essentially, they use the whole Voyageurs National Park region, and so that's why it's named after them, to honor them. And this whole area, because it's on the border with Canada, it's called the Boundary Waters, which is really neat. There's also the logging industry was really big in the area. There was, I feel like the upper Midwest, I've seen more trains than I've ever seen in my life. There are just trains everywhere, and they run all the time. I don't know what that means, but just a ton of trains. So that is the history of Voyageurs National Park. That's why it's called what it's called. It's mostly a park that's made up of lakes and rivers, which makes sense because it's in Minnesota, which is known for that. It's a state that's known for that. So I loved Voyageurs National Park. I don't know if I would have loved it as much in a different season, in a fall or winter season, but it was the perfect time of year to visit. It's just so beautiful. I'm definitely a water person. Love being by the water. Love just walking outside my Airbnb and seeing the lake, and then hiking near water and hiking near the lake. It was beautiful. And from Orr, Minnesota, I traveled 4 hours to Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Eau Claire is actually like 3 cities in one. So if you imagine a Y shape, that is the convergence of 2 rivers, the Chippewa and the Eau Claire River. And essentially, the Voyageurs use these routes too. And when they're coming down the Chippewa River, they saw the Eau Claire, and the water was really clear, so they named it in French Clear Waters, Eau Claire. And then, so imagine that Y shape, 3 little towns on the 3 sides of the Y sprouted up. They were originally 3 towns and then eventually became 1. But today there are pedestrian bridges. They used to be train bridges, but they've turned them into amazing pedestrian bridges. Go across to every part of the Y. There's actually a river trail that you can follow across the entire city, like that whole area, which is so cool because you're walking by the river the whole entire time, and it's just so beautiful. I can't even tell you how beautiful these rivers are. Just so serene, moving really, really quickly. I think just because it's spring, right, and everything's melting, and it's been raining a lot, and so I think they're full and they're moving fast. But the fishermen are out. There are places where like kids can wade into the river. You can go down and like stand at the fork in the river. It's a beautiful city. It's gentrified. They've kept all the old architecture but modernized it, and they've added new architecture. The downtown is just so beautiful, and the whole place is walkable. Like, you can walk everywhere. I haven't taken my car anywhere while I've been here. So just probably one of my favorite cities that I've visited so far, and I hit it at the perfect time of year because it's in the 70s, it's sunny, everything is blooming. There are cherry blossoms blooming, there are tulips blooming. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. So I totally lucked out. I'm visiting Eau Claire at this time of year, and really excited that I got to see it and got to experience it this way. There's also a brewery here that apparently my Airbnb host said people come to Eau Claire just to visit. It's called the Brewing Project. Project with a K is how they spell it. And I had their blood orange ale, and it was delicious. I am a sucker for anything flavored blood orange, and that I finished that drink way too fast. It was really good. So that's Eau Claire. Next, I'm off to Indiana Dunes National Park in Chicago. I cannot wait to experience that and to tell you about that. But until next time, I wish you happy travels wherever life is taking you.